Hi everyone, this is Angel Arts, and we're having another movie review, with not just one special guest, but two special guests. Hello. So hopefully these two faces are relatively familiar to many of you. If not, I would like you to all to meet my husband, Colin.
Hello.
As well as one of my very great YouTubing friends, Shay.
Hello, everybody.
Both of whom have appeared in my channel for various reasons. I'll probably try to put various links below where you've seen some reviews that I've already done with my husband prior, and some other things I've done with Shay. But today, we're going to be reviewing the latest, well, as of this recording, the latest Marvel movie, Shang-Chi, and the Legend of the Ten Rings, I believe is the full title. So just to let you all know, we will try to keep the front end of this as spoiler-free as possible, and then we're going to start diving into spoilers. So, who wants to start with their spoiler-free assessment of this movie?
I know more or less you're great. At least I don't know Harks. Yeah, I guess I'll start. I mean, as from a Marvel movie perspective, last one I watched was Endgame, and that includes the TV shows. I still have to do a lot of catch up. Now, I don't think any of that was really necessary, thankfully. It does look like a really nice reboot to just ideas and bringing a new phase into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So that was really neat. But I'm also such a comic fan that I did feel like I was missing a couple connection points into the comics themselves, and not that that's necessary. Of course, this is a movie, right? It's its own thing, but I felt a little bit lost to some degree. So there was a good and bad feelings for all that. I think that it's relatively positive overall, though, because a reboot is necessary sometimes, just starting from clean slate, you know.
Yeah. I basically, for me, the obvious draw was not just Asian representation, like, oh, there's a token person of a group that's not been in a Marvel movie. It was like full on, like, and you got lots of like the different cultures in America and in China, and even within those places, and within the families, and so the diversity of like age and geography and perspectives, that was really cool. The thing that I said in my whiteboard review that it was. The humor was unexpected. With Aquafina in it, how could I expect it not to be funny? But the humor to me was at a minimum the second, one of the two most important strengths, because like there were so many parts that were just hilarious. Like, I mean, beyond Aquafina, I'll just say there's two other characters. I'm not spoilers. It's not that it's huge, but there are two other characters who are completely, like, just really funny as well. And one sequence, which I'll come back to later, which is, to me, it's not like the most deep-ass sequence of the movie, but it's the best one, because it's just perfect and really, to me, catapults, literally and figuratively, the movie forward. So, yeah.
So like Colin said, as an Asian American myself, I was very happy for this film to come out, because I do believe that this film did for the Asian community what Black Panther did for the Black community. And so that in of itself was really appealing. One thing I also enjoyed as well in terms of representation is they had some, just like in Black Panther, they had some excellent female characters, very strong female characters. And I tend to be a bit of a feminist myself. Like, I really enjoy shows and movies that make it a point to showcase like women leads and strong women supporting leads in movies. And for some people, they feel that can get shoved down your throats a little bit. Like, we get it, girl power, blah, 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 blah. I personally feel like they're allowed to overcompensate. I'm a lot more forgiving when movies tend to be a little bit maybe overt with their girl powerness. But I do believe that in this film, they did it in such a way that it wasn't like shoving it down your throat. They're like, these are just strong characters that happen to be women in this movie. So I really liked that, and hopefully that will help some of the people from whom feminism in these types of movies have rubbed them the wrong way. I think this might work well for them. The other thing I really loved about this movie is that Marvel has been notorious for not having the deepest of villains, or villains that are really like more than just, hey, I'm just going to twirl my mustache and take over the world. So this was a really awesome take on a villain. And a lot of it, of course, has to do with the actor, Tony Leung, who is a huge Asian actor. This is actually his first, I believe I read this is actually his first role as an antagonist. Because from my understanding, he typically is like the Tom Hanks of Asia.
That's awesome.
And also a bit of a heartthrob. Like, he's sort of like the Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise type of actor who doesn't really age, like, which I think is great. And so I know a lot of people... Ralph Macchio. So now I know a lot of people were excited for his role, and I thought that he played an excellent sympathetic villain. So if you're looking for a movie where it's, without getting too spoilish, just in general, a villain well done, this is definitely the movie for it. And then the last thing I will say is that the fight choreography, hands down excellent. Every single fight scene was very different from each other. So they brought in very fresh and new things. And they were all very like artistic and artsy. Like, I think one of my favorites was the one at the very beginning, again, without being too spoilers, at the very beginning, the way that it was put together. And there was a nuance. It wasn't just a fight scene. And that's all I'm going to say for right now. It wasn't just a fight scene. It was something else. And you're like, ooh, interesting. I like what they did with that. So, that's why overall I thought this was definitely one of my favorite Marvel movies, up to date, right up there with like Black Panther and Endgame, in my opinion.
Wow.
So.
That's pretty, I probably wouldn't put it that high up. I mean, Iron Man was just such a strong movie for me, and it was the first one that really kicked all of this off, and it's funny that this kind of brings back to that, like, because of the Mandarin connection, and the 10 Rings, and just, this is where it started, and so it's symbolically a really good place to just, here's a relaunch, and it's again, the cast, not just the cast, but even culturally, it's opening it up to what the Eternals could lead to, right? This is about...
Eternals.
Eternals.
External, they're opening up, so it's fine.
Eternals.
That's like 30 years from now. But yeah, and so they have this opportunity now. It's really broadening the... just the options that the universe is going to come. But yeah, I don't know where I would put it. I think it stands it's fresh because it's kung fu. It's a kung fu movie. Yeah. Like, it's Marvel, but they're really now messing with other genres, and I'm kind of excited by that as well. Like, they have other places that they can go where they can start really what's it called, genre bending, like just like mixing things together, fusion, genre fusion, because it's superheroes, but it's just it was such a kung fu movie, like action movie, like there's other movies like that, spiritually these were like Jackie Chan movies. What's the one with the the one with the gangs? Anyways, it's so I'm kind of impressed by where it could go, but I don't know, it didn't sit with me like as a... I wish it was a little stronger.
No, I don't
know if I'm alone there yet.
We're starting blind. I don't know if there's any non-spoiler.
I have some. I have a bunch. So I like what Shay said, because it obviously gave a lot of homages to the Jackie Chan films, definitely the Bruce Lee films like Enter the Dragon, and then of course Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
With Michelle Yeoh. That was Michelle Yeoh from it, right?
I don't know.
I will look up, but I'm pretty sure that was literally, which was a little nod.
So it was a really cool to have those tiny nods throughout, like Easter egg-like nods that were not necessarily Marvel nods. Like, they were nods towards other Marvel movies or Marvel lore. They were more of just classic Asian, like, kung fu or martial arts movies. Which I really enjoyed. Yeah. And so, I think that I feel it's doing very well despite COVID. I definitely would have loved to have been in a better situation for this movie to be out when it was probably more universally like widespread for people to go see.
Yeah.
Because that definitely, I'm just curious to see how it would have done if we weren't in the middle of the pandemic.
It's always nicer to do widespread on the wide screen, but like I feel like at this point people have pretty much settled into like they'll watch it they watch it on at home too. So
yeah. And the last thing I will say that's non-spoilerish, which was touched on by Shay a little bit, is that it is a movie that you don't feel like you're missing something if you hadn't seen some of the other films or even seen like WandaVision or Loki or any of the other shows that are right now on Disney Plus. Because, there definitely can be moments when you're like, I'm pretty sure that was a reference to something, but I don't know what it was. I don't think you're going to feel that way. You can pretty much go in without knowing anything about Shang-Chi or really about anything that's been happening recently in the Marvel Universe. It'll be fine. So this is the end of the non-spoiler section, so you are fair warned if you haven't seen this movie yet, if nothing that we've said has convinced you to see the movie, or if you don't care, then let's just move on to spoiler stuff.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about spoiler stuff?
Yes, I always like to eat the bad vegetables first. So, good. We'll get to the bus. My main drawback was and to a degree this might be just a personal preference, but some of the action towards the end, and it became like it wasn't as grounded and was somewhat more generic, and when they were flying through the air and all these like CGI, it took away from the bus was part of the reason the bus was so amazing was because it was an unexpected venue to have all of these incredible martial arts, but it wasn't just the martial arts. It was just, they were throwing everything in that one scene. But when you sort of got into the back and forth with the family and the dad and the aunt and everything else, which, I mean, it may have gone a little bit longer, get a little repetitive, but I thought it was still really, it was moving and appealing. It was. But when it just got too much into, like, we're flying around and having these, like, wild back and forth. Like, I leaned over to Hark and I'm like, ooh, it's Street Fighter versus Capcom. Like, I liked that part of it because it was sort of, I'm fine with it's not realistic. The plus ones aren't realistic. None of it's realistic. But, like, when it was the Street Fighters, what I called that scene, like, that was kind of just fun and, like, sort of silly. Mm-hmm. But when they were doing dramatic action, it got too much for me into sort of repetitive, flying through the clouds or the water and everything. And I sort of felt my attention drift a little. But again, disclaimer that the scenes I tend to fall asleep in movies are action scenes, whereas dialogue and whatever is something that's actually not, like, you don't know what's going to happen, or it's not, then I find that more engaging. But I don't think, and in browsing reviews briefly, I found that I'm not alone in the being a little bit underwhelmed by the Act 3 action, I guess.
I'm of the critical minority because I know that historically Marvel, one of the biggest criticisms of Marvel, especially by Act 3, is that it's pretty much a
cookie cutter, sort of,
or just a CGI, CGI candy. I'll say that. It's like a CGI candy fest for the vast majority of them in Act 3. And I understand why that's a turnoff for a lot of people. Yeah. And maybe for me, I am way more forgiving of that kind of stuff, or at least, I don't know. Like, I think when I think of martial arts mixed with martial arts mixed with Marvel, I think Dragon Ball Z Goku. So I go into this film wanting and expecting that CGI, because I feel like this is the place where you do it. Like, if you're going to do a Goku-esque, Dragon Ball Age-esque, do it in Act 3, do all the CGI. So that never bothered me in any Marvel movie, because I love like the bus stuff, which I know you're going to get to, because it is more grounded. But as the story progresses, I want it to be big and grand and like all over the top with, okay, sure, Michael Bay explosions left and right, which again, a lot of people are critical of. But for me, maybe I'm like more simple-minded. Maybe I'm easier to please. But those are the kind of things that's what I had zero problem with all the CGI at the end, because again, I come to want and expect it out of a Marvel film. Yeah. If I wanted to see something that was more like the climax of Bruce Lee's like Enter the Dragon, I'll watch more of a Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon movie. But if I'm going to see a Marvel movie, I want to see the CGI. But that's just me.
Yeah. I mean, I might be in the mix, in the middle there. I see. I think I felt like Act 3 was getting. It wasn't weak because the CGI was weak. Not at all. Like the action scene was pretty awesome with the dragon flying around with that horror creature coming out. What I think, it kind of got weak for me is that the beginning of the movie is you learn about the character Shang-Chi, and he's revealing to you that he's more than what he seems via the other character. Katie. And so I felt like that Act 1 setup leading into the Act 2, where now you're seeing, oh no, he can actually fight. He does have like, from a heritage perspective, he has his mother and father have, he's inheriting things that make him, he's trained for this, and he's got these powers. They're not really powers yet, but he can develop them. And then you get to Act 3, and it turns into a dragon fight with a horror creature, with an eldritch horror creature from Lovecraft, right? And it's like, at that point, I'm like, but we spent this movie learning about Shang-Chi. Like, I don't need to see a dragon take this thing out, I felt like they needed to take a couple more steps there to make it more about a fight where Shang-Chi, I mean, I know the final blow is, of course, Shang-Chi, right? But I felt like it needed to be more than just him and his sister riding a dragon.
I agree.
In the epic fight. This was a Shang-Chi movie,
Not never-ending story.
I only kept thinking about it. Or that they made the dragon more like we heard there were some lines there with the mother. And I don't know if it was explicit or not, but the dragon's heart, So there was obviously a connection there, a mystical connection there to the dragon. But it was implied, or I was assuming it, and if they were maybe controlling the dragon in a different way, or the bond was more explicit in the narrative, so that them on the dragon was actually, that was them, that was like a power within them, not just a force that they got to partner with for the final fight. So, yeah.
And I was going to say so I was just thinking through action generally, and and my standard thing when I do these reviews, if anything you connect with, or specific line or quote or show or movie that we reference, if you in the comments, if you have any experience with that, or that'd be cool to mention, including I think of Avatar: The Last Airbender, if any of you have seen, or Eat Man, which Hart hasn't seen. His dad does somehow, but there's this movie Eat Man, which is a Chinese movie, where it's like a martial arts movie, but to me the action was gripping in that. And Avatar: The Last Airbender, I always say that's strangely the thing I find myself most intrigued by, and that is sort of, it's not really grounded, but it maybe because it's animated, it's able to be so just has an unlimited color palette, and I don't know, but for some reason that is always engaging to me. But and I was going to bring the airport scene in Civil War as an example, but I think that actually maybe that's just my wheelhouse, or it's just better to have the action scenes be grounded, because there are many, many, many people have spoken to the airport scene in Civil War as unbelievable, and it is. But I think it's the same sort of deal with the bus, because I guess now getting into the bus, because I have a million years to review, and the bus was just unbelievable, not just from a construction perspective, how they had the different levels and it's going back and forth, and the utter hilariousness of the guy on the YouTube thing being I'm gonna comment on this because I had a year of martial arts in elementary
school. So I'll go
play
this. Yeah.
So great, and then I'm so meta over the YouTube people were wow, but it's a knowing thing. You guys at YouTube like it. So and it was, but it was also, I wonder how much they intentionally made it slow in the beginning, or we're just gonna go back and forth, and almost a slow pace, so that when you got to that scene, it was just it took off, and it was just So creative and hilarious and really threw it into motion.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite combat scene was the one at the very beginning between Shang-Chi's two parents when they first met. Nice. Because it was just so artistic and so beautiful, and I just love how the use of the CGI, the use of the special effects with like the wind and the leaves. I was telling Shay, it's like, this is very like Pocahontas. Like if Pocahontas was a martial artist, like it would be Shang-Chi's mom.
That's why.
And so, but I loved it because it was. I get, like I said, it was very artsy, and it just really showed how graceful but powerful his mom was, which made me really get very attached to the mother character almost immediately. And just watching the two of them fight, it was like, I've never seen it before. It was fight flirting or fight courting. There was like something very sexual about this fight between these two people, which was really interesting. Like just they were able to, slow the camera down. Normally when you slow down the camera, you slow it down with like these really powerful punches. But the slow parts were like the, gazing lovingly into each other's eyes. I was like, I've never seen it used that way in the middle of a fight. And just being able to see their two styles, how they contrasted so differently. Because his style, even with the rings are really flashy and has its own finesse and own like art style, I guess. But there's, obviously it was more about power, and hers was just more about like, she was very graceful and flowy. And even when she was teaching Shang-Chi, like I thought it was very symbolic. Maybe other people thought it was too like on the nose, but I loved when she like physically opened his fist opened his palm into an open palm, and I was like, that to me is very symbolic, and I love that.
Yeah, the ant. Yeah, the ant. I like the visual callback there and the motions. The fights were very unique, but then there were some patterns in the fights that were repeated, but they were done so for narrative reasons. There was, you could tell that it was like something that was already, she was seeding what they would need in the future, as if there was already a bit of that destiny in play, and the mother already knew all that stuff. And when the ant opens the hand, right? It's Shang-Chi realizing he's too much like his dad, and he's all aggression, and the mother was all about defensive and passiveness. It's all about just going with the flow and letting the opponent's motions sort of be your reaction. Yeah. And some of the lines about like I think the father says one line that's something like stop pretending, and I thought that was interesting, because it's like he was trained as by the father to be the assassin, so to be the aggression, like all aggression. But he was trying to live a normal life and be, and not embrace that,
right.
But then the aunt says something, or the mom says something to him before the end scene where she gets taken out. And it was a similar line, but it was spun around in a different way. And it's the idea of like, you have to be you have to be both. You have to be both. And I think that's the bit of the yin yang concept.
I love that.
And then when you get that, and that's when you get the 5 rings, and you get the other 5 rings, and it's like it's both of those forces coming together, and then he owns.
I love that message. Balance. Right. I love that message, because it wasn't like your dad is like evil. Like, don't be like your dad, be like me. Absolutely. I love that she says you need to embrace both, which
believable monster.
Which again brings it to what I thought was like the best character decision for Shang-Chi, is that he is a killer. He is a killer. Yeah. Like for most other Marvel movies, you expect.
Yeah, people died in this one. Like they
right. when Katie asks her, you didn't go through with it, right? You didn't actually kill the killer of your mom. He's like, of course not. And that's what you would expect to be from most other Marvel superheroes. But no, he actually legitimately tried. He did kill the killer of his mom, and it actually was foreshadowed before, because there was the part where he was fighting the guy with the ninja mask, the one that was like who had been slashing him all through his life. And he had him pinned down, and he had the dagger. Shang-Chi had the dagger in his hand. He legitimately was going to kill him in that moment. He was going to strike him down. And the only reason he didn't was because his father intervened. So that, I think, foreshadowed that, he is willing. I'll go all the way. He is willing to go the extra mile, because he was trained to be an assassin. And I just love that, he does have that darkness within him. And, he uses it. He doesn't. The lesson is you're not supposed to hide from it or shy away from it. You accept it. You accept the part of that is a part of you, and you just use both the dark and the light to be the complete person, as it's not a perfect person, it's a flawed person, but that's who he is. And I think that was part of what the mother was trying to say.
Yeah.
You know,
which is why that romance happened during the fight, where the father was coming at the mother aggressively, and she was just like moving things around, right? Like he couldn't get any moves in. She was just so good at deflecting, right? But she wasn't angry in the fight at all. She was always composed. She understood that that's who he was. You know, that was his being, and when the union happens, it's almost because they almost met their equal from those two sides, you know, and then they had the children, you know, and so I thought it was very artistic. It was very well done,
right? And I think you guys are kind of convincing me, or the film did a little too, but I think initially what Park was reacting to, you haven't seen Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, right?
No, okay. I haven't.
I haven't. So what I'm saying is that, like, and there's been other variations on that, and I mean, the Matrix now, it's not, like, but that sort of thing.
Same choreographer.
Is it?
All three, I believe.
All three.
Of this and the
Crouching Tiger and this one and the Matrix, I knew was with the Crouching Tiger.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because if I wasn't at Toronto Film Festival, I'd be devouring all aspects of the thing. But there's so many. I'm like multitasking, writing another review as we're talking. Not as we're talking, but like
how dare you?
While there's pauses. So I didn't know that, but that's awesome to know. And so because of that, it first felt like familiar, and maybe a little bit was Hark speaking of like, the woman can be more powerful than men, didn't you know? Like that's maybe, I'm not saying that that's what it is, but I'm saying that like that's how I took it initially, because I'd seen the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon choreography and some of those things. That's how it felt initially, and not like the bus. But the actual like relationships and character stuff that they went in after that certainly worked for me. And now that seeing it again, it wouldn't have lost that in a good way. It would have lost that repetitive or generic or cliched aspect, and I could have fully appreciated it more. But no, that's interesting.
Yeah. Can I piggyback on that, because I think so. I agree with what you said with the whole the from a feminist perspective, the empowerment and stuff that they deliver in this movie. Where I think these movies could stop doing, and it's not that the aspect of bringing that into this the what they're delivering, right? It's the lines. There's like writing that's done that when you are paying a lot of attention to the way something's written and the way that characters are expressing themselves to get that message across, it's like you could have done that without saying the line, because now. So let me give you the example that hit me when I was watching the movie. It was the sister, and we know that the sister, she wasn't allowed to train, and so she learned and that's its own strength, where that breaks down to me as a character development is that when she said, I just watched the men, but I did it better. And I was like, yeah, but you know what, it's not that the line bothers me, it's the line bothers me because now you're saying that Shang-Chi got a life of beatings and trainings and torture essentially to become who he became. And she was able to do that without any of that. So then what does it say about the entire temple of trained people underneath the 10 rings, right? So the line itself damages the narrative a little bit. Whereas if they didn't say that line, she'd just be a kick-ass person. Like she was propelled enough to pick up what she needed to learn from watching them through the window. And she excelled on her own to just want to be better than them. Not necessarily make the comment that she learned everything that Shang-Chi did, but without the beatings and the training, I don't understand.
I do agree. I think it would have been better if she wasn't comparing herself to other people.
Just make it their own character.
And I'm not even just talking about men and women. I mean, just like I think I try I'm not crazy competitive because I am. Colin is very competitive, and when I play competitive games, I try to not worry about other people like everybody else. I worry about myself. Like I basically like go in the mindset that I'm competing with myself, trying to be the best that I can be. And if it happens to rank me in a certain way with the rest of the group, fine. But so I think that's the key, because I feel like the reason why people do shy away or get bothered by like some of the feminist things because yes, like lines like I did it better than the men. Totally understand that. When
you don't need it in every movie is what I'm saying. We know they want, like it's welcomed, But from a storytelling perspective, it's 10 years of it now. You gotta like just let them be the characters. Just let them be characters.
Right.
Don't make them.
If there wasn't
don't
that,
define them because of the comparison. That's the only fly.
Well, I was wondering the entire time, and this is interesting because some of what is Dave Callahan? I'm trying to see the writers at a minimum are all men of this movie, which hasn't been the case for all the Marvel's main means. And I don't know. I'm trying to gauge if one of them primary writers is Asian or not, but like if not, I feel like that not that you can't, of course, but I guarantee you there's some people who would not be thrilled in the same way that Jeffrey Tambor can crush it in Transparent, but when there's so few movies that have trans people as actors and you're going to have a trans movie, you're like, let's
Well, you have to also understand that in Asian culture, many Asian cultures tend to be very male dominated. Like the wife obeys the husband. That's really like that's just how it is in like Japanese culture and like Korean culture. Like that's just how it is. Filipino culture also. So I get why maybe they're trying to make it a point to show these strong women and maybe even throwing in like that because they're trying to challenge or agitate. Because there's a lot of especially in the beginning when they're showing more of the slice of life, Asian life, like the fact that, you went through X number of years of college and all you are is a ballet person. Like that's very Asian. And it's like part of me laughs at it, but the other part of me is like, that's an unfortunate, in my opinion, a frustrating part of Asian culture, which I am purposely trying not to repeat with my own children. Because I will say it, I hate that part of Asian culture. I will say that word. I hate that part of Asian culture because I think that it's something that I believe it's something that we can be better at. So, and
to just to clarify, that Dave Callahan does, at least by all indication, seems to be Asian himself. So that makes sense. But and when you're talking about going around the table or having those comments in the beginning, that they were going to enjoy them, but it also reminded me. And if you forget everything else I say today, see the oh my god, not the
Crazy Rich Asians.
No. That was good. That was good. Michelle Yeoh
was in that too.
She was in that too. No. But Awkwafina was in the other one, which she got nominated for an Oscar. And
The Farewell.
The Farewell, which is
Farewell.
And that's part of why, believe me, I enjoyed the beginning, but until the bus hit, I was like, okay, because they're like. It felt a little bit checking off boxes of like we're saying Asian funny, like Asian family things now. Whereas the Farewell is unbelievable. It's so believable, and even in like and with Hark's family is Filipino, but like aspects of that. But it's so specific and rich and amazing, and so I think, it's different taste, but like I think it's as a movie superior. But like either way, you can supplement with that. If you like this and you don't need action, see The Farewell.
Speaking of Awkwafina, I think another thing that the movie did really well was the use of humor in the sense of when not to use the humor, because quite often in other Marvel movies. They'll drop humor when it's a little inappropriate. Like, for example, you'll have just come near the tail end of a very, like, emotional, deep scene, maybe with, like, two different characters, and all of a sudden, like, a joke would be dropped in from, like, the comic relief character. And it just completely, like, spoils what had built up as that really meaningful, deep moment. And so there were definitely some parts where I almost was like, okay, this is the part where Awkwafina is going to drop that one-liner, or, Trevor's going to come in and he's going to say, they don't? Oh, nothing? We're just going to move to the next scene? Well done. Good job. So that was another thing that I liked about that was how they strategically knew when not to use humor in the movie.
Yeah, it was a little bit more reduced. It's true, but it was there.
Yeah, it was definitely there.
Like integrated, but it wasn't as clunky as. Yeah, you're right.
And this being Adrian, was the Mandarin an Iron Man?
Oh yes, the Mandarin.
It shows how long ago it's been since I've seen Iron Man. But he was. Was Morris an Iron Man, or was Morris new?
No, he's new.
I just thought the whole. I mean, because there have been times when this comic relief, quote unquote, or like it's forced, or like being zany. But I just thought like almost every choice that was made by Morris and the Thing was just like when I'm on the grass, like I'm just acting like everything was great.
It's I like that you brought that up because if you don't remember, the Mandarin was one of the most like people hated what they did with the Mandarin in Iron Man. Because they expected the Mandarin to be this bad A, like total, only for it to have the big twist. Oh, the twist is I'm not really the Mandarin. I'm just an actor who's playing the Mandarin, and I'm not even Asian. And so that really, there was a huge backlash, which is why that movie was so critical and was criticized by a lot of people. To the point that this movie was their way of trying to fix that problem. Because they were trying to address, because there was that whole thing about how the dad, the real Mandarin, their father, was explaining like, yeah, they got this other guy to play me, and he was able to get the whole world to be afraid of an orange. And so I thought that they did the best that they. I thought that was the best that Marvel could have done to
so quick
up.
Too. It was so quick
because it was very meta. It was very meta, and they were trying to fix their previous mistakes. And I thought that was the best way they could have done it, to patch up that Mandarin snafu. Because I don't think that they intended to ever bring in the real Mandarin, but because there was such an outrage and outcry, I thought, okay, we need to fix this. Maybe we can fix this in a few. Oh, Shang-Chi, let's bring Shang-Chi. Maybe the whole reason they even decided to do Shang-Chi was so they could fix the Mandarin from Iron Man. That's the whole reason.
I like how Shay was like afraid of like, oh, I'm going to miss all these things and these Easter eggs and these prior things. I haven't seen it for so much. Meanwhile, he didn't miss anything. And I'm like, is he an Iron Man?
Like the main enemy. Main villain of Iron Man.
That's another reason why people were excited for this movie, because they wanted to see the Mandarin finally done correctly or properly, or make him an Asian at least, kind of thing. So
yeah, they're gonna take. I think they're gonna veer off where the comics went with all this, of course, like they already did with the first Mandarin, and this one with the 10 rings. It's already different lore in the MCU. And when you think about the future movie potential of all of this and what those rings could represent, and the post-credit scenes with that pulse, it's sending that signal out. I think it's going to start going into the Eternal stuff. It's going to go into, like, it might have something to do with all of that, which I don't think that's part of the comic book lore. The Mandarin rings are just like, there were 10 rings on each finger, right? And each one had kind of a power like the Infinity Stone. And so that's not what we saw, though. And the rings definitely represented something else. Yeah. But I'm also thinking that this is their first this is the introduction of the rings to all of us as an audience, right? And so we saw the father do them, and it was all just these aggressive punches, these whips, these explosion pieces, right?
It was very cool and unique weapon.
But it was his personality through these 10 rings. But I'm wondering if like it's maybe one of those rings is like a power ring, and then he's just kind of compounding that with the other rings,
Well, I do want to do some research, because if you look at the throne that had the 10 rings, each ring had a different Chinese word, or I think there were Chinese words associated with them. So I'm wondering what each of those words mean.
Yeah, I think they're going to go back to what the 10 rings, because each of the rings had a name back in the comics.
I'm sure they did.
And there was like power. There was like
So it's almost like the Infinity Stone.
It kind of was. It kind of was. Yeah. And so I'm wondering if that. I don't know if there are 10 Eternals. That's what I'm kind of. I should have looked this up, but I don't know if they're like aligning to each of these rings. Might be one of the Eternals or something. That's what the pulse.
Do you want to look it up? Because I was
the previous. Yeah, you can if you want.
Well, no, I'm saying based on the time. I don't know if or continuing or never mind.
We can just
in the comics. My understanding is each of the rings contained the soul of some cosmic galactic fighter. In the comics, I think that's what it was. So, and maybe again, that's the rings basically harnessed what their different powers were. So yeah, it could. I'm wondering if they're just pitching that. It could be unlocked, and we'll see it later, or they're just pitching that all together and doing something totally different.
Yeah, which might be the next 10 years of the rings might surround the entire thing, right? The next phase, the set of phases, like we don't know.
But but I do like the uniqueness. Like it's definitely, I thought it was a very creative. I don't know how they behave in the comic books, but using the rings as a weapon in combat was very creative, and I thought like, oh, that's super cool. Like you can use it as this and this as a whip and as a gun, and it's like it's really I would never have thought that a bunch of rings would be so versatile.
If we were to give grades, real quick,
I was going to ask what are your final grades?
Where would you put it?
I went back and forth a lot on B plus A minus or A minus. I know that sounds like very individual, but yeah. So at this point, I wrote on my thing A minus. So, but I would go B plus A minus, meaning I can switch that eventually.
Would you like to go next, Jay?
I would go B minus to B.
Okay.
So if I had to give a range, I would probably go low Bs for this. If I were to, like, I'm comparing just for context relative to other Marvel movies, right? Not as all movies, you know. Yeah,
I was gonna say if I was as a Marvel movie, I would rank it as an A.
Wow,
as an overall movie, I would mark it as an A minus. As an overall movie.
Nice.
Because I would put something like.
But are you? But as a movie, or like the because what it gives to the cinematic universe and what it brings to this, you know, by expanding the inclusivity and stuff like that, like that should be separated from the movie. Are you?
If I separate all of that in, I mean, if I separated all of that,
because then my grade would change too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. If I separated all of that, then I guess it. And again, if it was just overall across all movies, then I would put it more in the A minus B plus range. Yeah.
Cool. So there you go. That's the wrap up, folks.
All right.
Thank you for watching. Until next time, everybody, love yourselves and love each other.
Bye-bye.
Bye.